Let us begin looking at the agenda. Welcome all. I see first item is call. So we have a roll call.
Yes. Commissioner Abbott.
Here.
Commissioner Armendariz.
Here.
Commissioner Beal.
Here.
Commissioner Chang Frank. Commissioner Kent.
Here.
Commissioner Price.
Here.
And Chair Martin.
Here. Okay, next is approval of the minutes. We have a motion to approve.
I'll go ahead and motion that we approve them. I'm sorry. Go ahead and motion that we approve the minutes.
I second the motion.
All right. Roll call.
Commissioner Abbott.
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz.
Yes.
Commissioner Beal.
Yes.
Commissioner Kent.
Yes.
Commissioner Price.
Yes.
Chair Martin.
Yes. Okay, next up is item 4, announcements, staff and committee members. Announcements, reports, and updates of status of previous agenda items.
I think you have public comments first, Chair.
Oh, I certainly skipped over that. Yes. Thank you. Number 3, public comment for persons desiring to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda. Please note that each speaker is limited to up to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the commission's ability to take and/or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda. So please do raise your hand if you would like to speak about something that is not on tonight's agenda. And I see some hands raised. Staff, could you let them in?
Susan, you're up.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Susan Schwartz, head of Friends of Five Creeks, an all-volunteer group working for creeks, watersheds, and urban nature since we were founded in Albany 25 years ago. First, I want to enthusiastically thank Albany for obtaining an Alameda County grant that, along with Old City Bond Funds for Creeks, should be enough to complete the Codornices Creek Trail, and we look forward to seeing this long-awaited project scheduled. We are excited that tomorrow we will welcome a new group of 4 interns from Albany High School's EdSet program. One of them already made waves. She spotted a river otter in Codornices Creek, as far as we know, the first ever. This is exciting, but not entirely good news for the trout, especially since a lot of the creek below San Pablo Avenue is dry for the first time in human memory. We're not sure this is entirely due to drought. Environmental DNA results are in from our spring intern sampling of creek sediments. Almost 1,000 speakers were detected in Cerrito and Codornices Creeks. We're delighted that our Albany High School students were able to be part of this cutting-edge statewide citizen science effort to basically learn more about California's biodiversity, but alas, no trout DNA was found. That doesn't mean they aren't there, but it's not what we hoped. Creek news continues to be a little surreal. Our older products on Cerrito Creek at El Cerrito Plaza, Adams, and the foot of Albany Hill are just beautiful. Codornices is lovely up to almost 9th Street. Where there on the Albany side, it's been given over to a big hazardous homeless camp that butts right up against the Little League fence, blocks the trail, and now has campers sleeping in the dry creek bed. They also build campfires. We hope to see some of you at our Coastal Cleanup Day, September 18th, cleaning the Buchanan area approaches to Albany Salt Marsh and Beach. This is a registration only event to keep it small and safe. I hope some of you will sign up on our website. Turning to the new master plan, we're delighted that it isn't on tonight's agenda, and the bulb is. We hope this means that Albany is taking time to think long-term. We think the consultants did a good job on evaluating the current popularity of capital projects, and we're delighted that Albany residents set high values on maintenance and natural areas. We're looking forward to future meetings when we can all evaluate a draft plan for the long term, including integrating Albany's outstanding natural areas and coming challenges like climate change, demographics, and COVID. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Staff, let the next person in.
Hi, I'm Susan Moffett from Love the Bulb, and I just wanted to share a couple of fun things that happened last weekend. We had a concert at the Albany Bulb by the celebrated Del Sol Quartet, and they performed 3 world premieres by contemporary composers, and we had a great crowd, and it was really a wonderful event. And right before that, we had our garden volunteers working hard on our native plant garden. And I want to thank Commissioners Price and Armendariz for their hard work on the garden. Thank you for that. And just wanted to let you know also that we continue to get really good feedback on the augmented reality and audio tour that we made with UC Berkeley students called Monument to Extraction. And if anybody hasn't had a chance to see that yet, you can download it at monumenttoextraction.org. I do have some policy comments, but I assume that later we will, in the official Albany Bulb agenda item, there will be public comment available, a time available for that. Is that correct? Okay, great, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, next.
Hello, my name is John Winnett, and I'm a university professor in the Arts and American Studies and a co-director of a plein air performing arts event series out at the Bulb, which started during COVID and has seen great success in the past year. To a person, I just want to report how impressed the audience and the artists have been by the Bulb and the opportunity to be part of the series. As mentioned at a previous meeting, I want to commend Albany for its outstanding city parks, and I have to single out one that is unique in the entire US park system. The Bulb is without equal, a unique resource, and one that is richly deserving in thoughtful and careful management. I personally don't think it's broken, but I do see the great value in looking to maintain its extraordinary character, welcoming to artists, dog guardians, nature lovers, and people of all ages. I thank the commissioners for the seriousness with which you are supporting the Bulb, and thank you for your time and service.
Okay, thank you. Last call for people to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Okay, seeing no more raised hands, let's look at the next item. Is now item 4, announcements. Staff and committee members, announcements, reports, and updates of status of previous agenda items. Isabel, you want to begin?
Yes, sure. I have a few announcements, and Sid will also provide an overview of the Recreation Department's activities over the summer and what we're planning in the fall and near future. I wanted to just update the commission briefly on dog park improvements. Public Works is reviewing a preliminary design for the dog park, and we hope to bring this design to you in the at a future meeting, which may be October or November. October is looking pretty full with the Parks Master Plan, which is the next item that I wanted to update you on. Groundworks office hosted the third workshop and final workshop of the Parks Master Plan to update it. And over 116 community members voiced their preferences for priorities for the Parks Master Plan, and even more shared feedback via written comment was shared. Groundworks office has tabulated and hosted the results, posted the results of the workshop, which can be found on the Parks Master Plan website at albanyparks.com. Survey results, the survey closed at the end of August, and the results of the survey should also post soon to the website. As for the Parks Master Plan timeline, Groundworks will come back to the Pros Commission in October with a draft of the Parks Master Plan for your review and feedback. There will also be an item on Prop 68 projects for the Commission to consider. And then both items should go to Council for approval in November and in time for us to submit the application, the Prop 68 application by the end of December. That's all for me.
Okay. I guess it's my turn. Thanks, everyone. I'd like to provide, like Isabel said, an update on our Recreation and Community Services Department programs as we work our way back to fully reopening following the guidance of health officials. All of our facilities reopened, as did City Hall on July the 6th. Our community is now able to conduct in-person business, such as outdoor facility reservations for tennis courts, block parties, and picnic areas, as well as register for programs. In addition to our ongoing virtual programs, we conducted in-person summer camps for children that included cooking, carpentry, engineering with Legos, art, and basketball. While most of the camps were held outdoors, we were able to accommodate a limited number of programs indoors that followed COVID-19 guidelines. Also, adult softball, soccer, and drop-in pickleball have resumed as well. At Friendship Club, they hosted the summer camp, the annual summer camp, and that took place on June 14th and concluded on August the 6th. The in-person Friendship after-school program began on August 17th and continues to provide this valuable and enriching program to the community. At the Senior Center, they began serving in-person lunch, yay, on July 14th, and have continued that service 2 days per week on Wednesdays and Thursdays. On July 1st, a pick up and go meal service was added where a 5-day supply of pre-made frozen meals are available for pickup every Thursday. Meanwhile, Meals on Wheels and grocery bags from the Mercy Brown Bag Program have continued throughout the pandemic as normal. All throughout the pandemic, the Senior Center has offered a robust virtual programming schedule, and they too are gradually adding safely in-person programming such as the Senior Center Chorus, painting, needlecraft, and ping pong. Our staff is excited and eager to continue offering programs and services to the community as health guidelines permit. We are currently working on programming plans for the spring and summer and can't wait to get back to an increased level of programming. That's my announcement, and thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next up, we have Commissioner Abbott and then Commissioner Price.
Thank you. Normally this time of year, I would be inviting everybody to the annual Solano Stroll, but of course, that's kind of out of the question this year again, sadly. However, this weekend there will be an event we're calling the Solano Stroll Presents the Sidewalk Affair. It's going to be a much smaller event, much smaller scale, nothing like the crowds of a traditional stroll. It actually is like the stroll from the old days where it began in the 70s. We're not closing the street, lots of offers and participation for merchants, but not that many booths, no outside food, things like that. So we invite everybody to come down. It's all free, 10 to 5 Sunday on Solano Avenue, and enjoy the afternoon on Solano Avenue. And shifting gears a tiny bit, I just want to say that voting for the finalists in the Chamber of Commerce Best of Albany event is going on. So I invite everybody to go to everythingalbany.com and click the big button that says vote here for the Best of Albany. Thank you.
This is not an announcement, and maybe the timing is wrong. I just I had a follow-up question for Isabel about the schedule. Is that okay? I just want to clarify, so that they'll present in October, which is great. And then, but will that be the commission's only chance to weigh in before it goes to the city council?
Yes. So one meeting with the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission is planned for October, and then the consultants will take in your feedback, include that into their presentation to the council, and then commission members can also come to the council meeting and voice additional comments if you wish to do so.
And we'll also, you said there will be an item for Prop 68 funding.
Yeah, a separate item to discuss potential project for the use of the funding.
Will it be possible to see is it possible to see any of the content before the meeting, just so we're able to?
Yeah, the plan is to provide you with the draft plan as part of your packet.
Okay.
So you'll have, and we usually post on Thursday, a week before the meeting. So you'll have a week to review the draft plan before the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, I had a related follow-up question. Will we also see where are the proposed Prop 68 projects coming from, and will we see those a week in advance as well?
I'm not sure exactly about the Prop 68 process. The projects will come out of the Parks Master Plan, the priorities. We still have to assess, based on the priorities selected and the requirements of the grant, which projects rise to the top. I'm hoping that we can provide you that information ahead of time as well. It just depends on the timing of, getting the draft plan together and the Prop 68 information together as well. I'm hope that's my plan, but I cannot guarantee that I'll have a fully detailed, projects for you to review as part of the packet. It could be, an introduction, and then more information will be provided at the meeting.
If there's at least, I think it's important for us to be able to digest, but also for the public to know what the priorities are going into the meeting, and so that various interest groups or interested parties throughout the city know to prepare and or show up. So if at all possible, it would be, please do try to get that kind of list, even if it's not fully fleshed out, as for all the details, a week in advance.
Yes, that's the goal. Mm-hmm.
Is there any opportunity for there to be a little bit more time in the process? I realize we're trying to get the application in for the Prop 68 before the end of December, and based on meeting schedules, I know it gets compressed, but it feels very fast. So I'm just wondering if there's any option for allowing for a little bit more review.
I think we can assess that once you see the draft plan, and if the commission wishes to see the plan one more time before it goes to council, that we can certainly consider that request. But the hope is that we can move forward with the draft plan and the Prop 68 projects in November to give council 1 or 2 meetings to review both, and so that we have a finished draft, finished plan, and have enough time to turn around and work with the state on the on the application for Prop 68.
And I would echo those concerns, because if we do have a lot of requested modifications to the master plan, then it seems like it wouldn't be right to then just hand that off to the city council without knowing what it's actually going to look like from the consultants. So, I like that idea of the. I think we should be prepared to hold off on adopting it if we feel that's necessary in just the one meeting.
Mm-hmm. And I think the recommendation from staff for the pros will be to provide feedback. We're not asking the commission to endorse the plan. We're asking you for feedback to finish the plan so that it can move, so that the council can, so that your feedback can be included in the final draft that goes to council.
If I could comment also, I think, in terms of the commission trying to get things done, we have to really look at the calendar and how, so this master plan has ran its course over the summer. And our role isn't to decide what to do. It's to make a recommendation, but ultimately it's the city council decides all that. There's a process. And so we for the timing of it, we have to deliver our recommendation in our next meeting so that the process can move on, because this year, or one of the 2 years our term, is coming to an end. And we have to be ready to move on to the next year and actually start doing things. So I think, there's just no opportunity for delay here. And the staff's going to do the best they can to get things to us. But that said, that's dependent on other actions by other people. So we can't make the clock run any faster than it's going to. That's how it is. That date's coming. I guess we could try to postpone the meeting, our next meeting, but that wouldn't help if the discussions, planned for the second city council meeting in November. So there it is. We've got to, it's the time is in the next month for us to make our recommendations.
And what I would say is it's important to separate the timeline for Prop 68, which actually does have a state-imposed deadline in the next few months, from the Parks Master Plan, which is just, as far as I know, it's whatever the city of Albany wants it to be, and that for that timeline. So I think we do actually have an opportunity to push that back if we feel like we do want to see it come before us one more time to see what the revisions look like, and or if we want to. So that's all I'll say about that. Any other announcements or discussion about the announcements? Okay, seeing none. Next up is item 5, presentations. Albany Bulb, presentation from staff providing background information on the Albany waterfront, including planning, background, and regulatory framework. Recommendation is for information only. We'll have the presentation from staff, followed by questions from the usual procedure is to then followed by questions from the commissioners, followed by public comment, followed by discussion amongst commissioners. And we have Jeff Bond presenting.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Jeff Bond, I'm the Community Development Director for the city. What I'd like to do is give you hopefully a relatively brief PowerPoint presentation that hits on some of the highlights. Apologize in advance for this presentation because frankly, it's kind of bureaucratic. But that's what I think it's important for the commission to understand, are the complexities of the Albany waterfront. And hopefully my presentation will give you a little bit of an orientation to that. And I fully expect you'll have lots of questions, and I look forward to trying to answer those for you. So I'm going to share my screen here. Just bear with me a second. There we go. There we go. Okay. So first, some context for the presentation. This is really background information, not trying to engage in the master planning process that you were just talking about this evening. So it's kind of a look back, not a look forward. But hopefully this presentation will help you if and when you start to have those discussions, whether it's in the master plan or something else. You've got the groundwork has been laid so that you can be making good decisions for us. Next, I'd like to give you a kind of a brief geographic overview. This is probably familiar to you, but it doesn't hurt to go through this because sometimes people kind of get the terminology of the geography out there confused. And at least the way that I use this is the bulb is not the whole thing. The bulb is the bulb at the far west end of the property. So the bulb is out here. This is, and I'll show you in a second, property ownership. This is primarily city owned. Sometimes you'll hear people referring to this area as the neck. This is the beach area here, recently greatly improved. And then this is the plateau area where the burrowing owl habitat is. Buchanan Street goes along here. There's the turnaround. Then the Bay Trail, again, you're familiar with this, I imagine. Great new improvements to the Bay Trail completed by the East Bay Regional Park District. It runs along here, then around east along Buchanan, and then ultimately north into Richmond. And last but not least, the Golden Gate Fields property over here. So as I mentioned, the property ownership is just the first complexity of this area.
Jeff, Jeff, I think your arrow is on a 2-second lag time. So when you say something, it's pointing at something else. So just a heads up.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Commissioner Kinnon, for that. I appreciate knowing that. So I'll go a little bit slower here. On the left side of the screen is the bulb. That's the city-owned portion of this property. And then there's kind of this sort of jigsaw puzzle of properties primarily owned. The land areas are primarily owned by the East Bay Regional Park District, including most of the neck, except for this strip of city right-of-way. And the way to think about this is basically, I think this was set aside decades ago with the vision of there would be a road running all the way out to the bulb. So this was just the right-of-way for that potential roadway. So we own a little slice of the middle of it. It doesn't really align perfectly with either of the two trails that run east-west along the neck. It's kind of in between them. And so the park district owns the top, the north side of the neck and the south side of the neck, and we have the slice in the middle. Plateau area here is again East Bay Regional Park District, and then there's some state of California properties. The beach property, again, I hope my cursor is catching up to me. The beach property is actually owned by the state of California, but there's an agreement between the state and East Bay Regional Park District to manage that property. So while title might say state of California, its functional operation is managed by the park district. And then again, lastly, the purple segment is the Golden Gate Fields property. So the other complexity to this is one of the most heavily regulated pieces of property on the planet, to be honest with you. There's a lot of government agencies that are involved here. The first four on this list, the city, the park district, state parks, and coastal conservancy, are really, I think, more than anything else, kind of advocates for restoration and ecological improvements and so forth for making the area better. And the remaining list, the five below that, aren't certainly not against that idea, but they have a much more legal regulatory role. And it's complicated. So for example, the Regional Water Quality Control Board regulates what goes into, among other things, regulates what goes into the bay. So if there's anything leaching out of the bulb, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, sometimes referred to as the Water Board, would be all over that. And their approval for projects would be required here. This is a landfill, and as such, it is regulated by, under state law, the overarching state agency that does landfill regulations is called Cal Recycle. It's changed names a bunch of times over the years, but basically their current name is Cal Recycle. And to add to the complexity, they delegate much of their regulatory authority to Alameda County Environmental Health. So there's this weird partnership, not weird, I shouldn't say that. There's this partnership between the county and the state in making sure that the landfill cap, unlike the water board, which is interested in the water part of it, Cal Recycle and the county are interested in the physical cap of the landfill. Bay Conservation and Development Commission is a regional agency. They ensure they regulate any construction within 100 feet of the shoreline. California Fish and Wildlife regulate anything that's going to have an ecological impact. And then with respect to Golden Gate Fields, the city of Berkeley is involved because a big portion, I think about 40% or so of the Golden Gate Fields property is located in the city of Berkeley. So whatever happens out on Golden Gate Fields, there would be, the city of Berkeley would be involved. And just a couple more slides here, and then I'll pause and take your questions and elaborate on anything you wish. Just to give you a little bit of the history of the Albany waterfront, particularly the non-Golden Gate Fields portion of this. So the landfill itself was created over a period of 20 years, beginning in 1963, and the filling ceased in 1983. In 2002, really the entire East Shore waterfront, publicly owned portion of the East Shore shoreline was established as a state park. It runs from Emeryville up into Richmond. So within the Albany jurisdiction, everything but Golden Gate Fields is in this designated state park. The interesting thing about this arrangement is that the East Bay Regional Park District is the kind of the management agency for this state park. There's the next big milestone was in 2005. That's when the Regional Water Quality Control Board said, you don't have to put a cap. From their perspective, we didn't need to put a cap on the bulb. And a comparison would be something like Cesar Chavez Park in Berkeley, where that is a capped landfill. It's more traditional municipal waste. And so that's a clay and kind of landscape cap to ensure that any potential hazards in the landfill don't come out. Within Albany, and many of you will probably remember in the mid-2000s, there was a lot of drama regarding a proposal from the development company out of Southern California to build a retail mall. That was in 2006. In 2007, the burrowing owl habitat was created as a part of a mitigation measure for the construction of the Tom Bates Fields, sports fields in Berkeley. And although it took many years, we do now have reports every year of burrowing owls using that habitat, which was nice. It took a few years for them to settle in, but that is becoming an important place for them. Due to a lot of the drama around the Caruso proposal, which was ultimately abandoned, the city council in 2008 created a Voices to Vision process that was really focused on Golden Gate Fields. I won't go into that in any detail, but that was an extensive planning process where there were numerous community meetings of different types that talked about the future of Golden Gate Fields. No final formal adopted policy came out of that process, but there is a lot of good background research associated with that. Next, in the period of 2010 to 2020, the planning and ultimately the construction of the Park District Beach Project was planned and constructed. I think this is important to point out a number of things. First, I think it's a great project. The improvements along the neck make it much easier for people, particularly people that have mobility limitations, to get out and enjoy it. And also there's some great improvements to the Bay Trail for bicyclists and pedestrians, as well as the beach. What's interesting about it is how long that took. physical improvements to waterfront takes a long time. It's a 10-year process. Moving along here, just to, again, highlighting some of the things that have been going on recently. There was in the 2011-2012 time period a proposal by the owners of the Golden Gate Fields to create a second campus for the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory that's up on above the UC Berkeley campus. And ultimately, that project did not go forward at all in any location. The laboratory selected a location in Richmond, but ultimately pulled the plug on all of it. So getting to more recent history, in 2016, we received a grant from the California Coastal Conservancy, who provided us some funds to think about what would be involved in kind of some planning background information to be what would be involved with transitioning the city-owned portion of the waterfront, that bulb portion, over to the East Bay Regional Park District. So it's one unified regional park. And there was, at the completion of that transition study, a memorandum of understanding to explore that process a little bit more. That memorandum of understanding will expire in a few months. And frankly, there wasn't a lot of discussion, not a lot of action on that memorandum of understanding. I think for a variety of reasons, both with the Park District and the city, I think there was a preference for just kind of maintaining the status quo, at least at the moment. And then finally, most recently, we have had some issues raised by Cal Recycle, that state agency, and through the county about some erosion, particularly on the northwest corner of the bulb. If you go around to the side that's facing the bay and look up on there's a rope swing and things there, I think. There's some trash and debris that's emerging out of the landfill. So they've given us a notice of violation regarding that, and we're hoping it's moving very slowly, frankly, but we're hoping to engage with them to understand what needs to be done to address that erosion and take care of that notice of violation. I'll mention Golden Gate Fields just briefly. It's private property. It's been a racetrack since the 30s and continuous operation really since shortly after the end of World War II. There is a voter-approved measure in 1990 that basically locks in the zoning. So anybody who wants to do something different than more or less what's there today would have to get a zoning amendment approved by the voters. The current zoning is shown on the screen here, does allow a few different facilities, parks and recreation, bars, commercial recreation, which really means horse racing, marinas and boat ramps, parking, restaurants, and so forth. So someday we'll have, if the horse racing industry continues to evolve and frankly lose popularity, I think the community will have to address Measure C at some point, but we're not there yet. And then just briefly, I'll go through our transition study just to highlight a couple of things. And I think there was a link in the materials that we set up for you. There was a link to this document. We didn't attach it as a PDF just because of its size, but one of the diagrams is a very conceptual enhancement idea of what kind of things that could be done to improve the experience for the bulb while keeping it still the bulb. And this was presented to the city council. The plan was accepted by the city council. It's not an official policy by any means. And if and when the time comes that we really look at some of these projects, we'll revisit all this. But I just thought it was important for you to know that some thought had been given to it as part of this transition plan, and gives you an idea of, is a good point of departure, if nothing else. And then there was a series, I'm not going to read these by any means, but there was a series of pages that summarized potential strategies and gave a rough order of magnitude of cost on the right-hand side. So some of the things that would be really great to do are pretty easy. Other things would be pretty expensive. All of them are probably pretty complicated in terms of jumping through the bureaucratic hurdles. So with that, I will stop my screen share and pause and be happy to answer any questions. And thank you for indulging me with with that PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, thank you. Questions from commissioners?
Jeff, I wanted to ask about the map. You talked about property ownership, and in commission lingo, I think in terms of jurisdiction. Is our jurisdiction, in terms of the Parks and Recreation Commission, is our jurisdiction the same as what's owned by the city of Albany, or is it somehow different?
Well, the city's jurisdiction is just limited to what's owned by the city. So we can make recommendations to the park district about what they want to do, but they have their own approval processes for their own projects. With respect to this commission's responsibilities, and Isabel and Sid can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the intention of the renaming a few years ago was to recognize the open space component of, by adding the phrase open space to your title, that was to recognize that there may be some other things beyond just the traditional creeks. But I should really defer to Isabel or Sid on their formal mission. I haven't looked at that in ages, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess looking at the map, then it seems like the part that's owned by the East Bay Regional Park District would definitely be under their jurisdiction, not ours. But the part that's owned by the state of California, maybe that falls under it. But I'll let Isabel talk more if she wants.
No, what Jeff said is correct. So what is city property is what the city has jurisdiction over. But anything else that is owned by the state, we don't have jurisdiction over. We can certainly make recommendations, try to work with them on projects, but ultimately it is their property.
Okay, Commissioner Mendries.
Hi, thanks, Jeff, for the presentation. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about that MOU with that is expiring, and is there, what were the details of that, and what is the next steps of that? That's my first question. And then the second question is about the Cal recycle violation. I've actually been on that site and looked at the number of things that seems like they're always making some comments about the bulb, and so what is the process for, is there a timeline that things have to be corrected, and if not, what happens then? Or I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. So with respect to the violations, we first became aware of the notice of violation in 2019 and retained a engineering firm, planning and engineering firm that, among other things, has a specialty in kind of hydrologic design to look at this and provide a kind of a rough preliminary idea of what could be done to mitigate the erosion that's going on there for the long term, in recognition of sea level rise and perhaps more intense storms and so forth. So we've submitted quite some time ago, maybe over a year, I can't remember exactly when we submitted, but some time ago we submitted this to the county of, here's an idea. And it's frank, it's not aesthetically, it's not the most beautiful thing, but that's what it wouldn't be necessary, is to kind of protect that area where the trash and debris is coming out of the landfill. So through rocks and so forth to try to keep it protected from storms. That area is pretty exposed sometimes to wave action and to storms. The time frame is out of our control. I wish I had an answer to that. It's a good question. I don't know. I check in with them every few months. Do you have anything for us? They say, no, thanks. We'll let you know when we do. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting now suddenly your first part of your question.
About the MOU with the.
Oh, the MOU, yeah. So the idea behind the MOU is just a few pages. It was basically to try to work out what would the city need to do before the park district would consider accepting the bulb and incorporating it into the regional park, and what planning stages, what plans would we have to go through, what kind of physical work maybe that we need to do. Basically, the park district, representing their own interests here, I think they're good for them. They don't want to inherit a big problem. This is a potentially contentious area. There's a history of litigation here, so they would want us to fight. If there's litigation, they want us to be the ones to defend such a decision. And they also don't want to inherit a piece of property that might have some safety issues. And so there would have to be some sort of program of mitigating some of the most obvious safety issues out there, so that they're not just taking on a big liability from us. And we just didn't get very far in those discussions. It's and again, I think it was kind of a mutual decision that for at least right now, the status quo is probably okay. I think good arguments could be made both to keep it a city park or to turn it over to the regional park district. And we're probably going to have to revisit that again as a city sometime in the near future. So we'll see.
Okay, other questions? Commissioner Abbott?
Great. Just thanks again for the presentation, Jeff. Real quick, I want to be, so I'm clear in my head, the strip that provides access really is not very wide. It doesn't align with that trail that goes along kind of and it basically is a continuation of Buchanan. That's right. It probably doesn't include the parking obviously not the new parking, but the parking along the fence at Golden Gate. It's really just the road straight through, it seems like.
It slices through that perpendicular parking. So the front end of your car would be on Golden Gate Fields property and the back end would be on city property.
So if I get hit, who do I sue? It doesn't matter. So
just try drive carefully.
So I guess really the point of my question is, as we consider any sort of improvement, there's been a request for some sort of structure, even just a storage shed. We're talking on the bulb. Out on the bulb. There's not going to be room for that. Maybe a small structure for a learning center or something, but really we're talking about on the bulb itself, not the neck, not by the parking, but out further.
You might be able to squeeze something in to just north of the pavement. As you're going down Buchanan out to the waterfront, just north of the pavement, there's kind of a grassy area, and then there's a fence. And kind of between that grassy area and fence is city a portion of the city right away, and theoretically something could be done there. It still needs to go through all these bureaucratic hoops.
Oh no, understood. It'd be a headache. Yeah.
So could we theoretically extend Buchanan all the way to the bulb if we had, is there right away to do that?
Theoretically, I don't think I wouldn't recommend that, but.
No, I'm not suggesting, I'm not asking for a permit today. I'm saying, but do we have the right of way is from perspective of the state and the other players?
That strip dates back 8 decades when there were proposals to do marinas and commercial development out there. And I think the only step that was taken, and somebody, I don't know who did it, but somebody carved out that right of way. Probably in the 40s or 50s.
I'm thinking in the same lines. I think that Todd was, or Commissioner Abbott, and we didn't say whether we were going to do comments and just questions here, but it's basically my fundamental feeling about the bulb is that anything we want to do out there is to require access, and the access is limited. That's our biggest challenge. So if all the questions that we're getting from our residents about the bulb are, they're asking for things that require access for us to provide. And if we've just just got a dirt road, it's going to cost a lot more money. And, you know, the other thing about this is the jurisdiction. I think, very confusing to the public that this, you know, that they're just asking us for what they want. And so anyway, that was my comment.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kent?
Just a couple. So Jeff, you mentioned liability issues, which seem right. If it's a city park and the trails, and looking at the list of improvements and the kind of the hazardous walking paths and falling areas and rebar sticking out of the ground, and all the stuff to come, that kind of makes the place interesting, but also kind of a liability and a little bit dangerous if you're not watching. What is the cost to the city for insurance? Is that a big hit, or do we know? Was it?
You know, we have, the city has an umbrella policy, if you will, we're in a consortium with a bunch of other cities. So we're kind of, this larger organization is self-insured. So we send one check to this group every year for everything, whether it's the waterfront or
Okay, so
yeah. You know, there's a deductible, and so some things I think we pay if there's a small claim, and then at a certain point, that kind of like how any other insurance would work.
Okay. The second question was looking at that list of improvements. You know, it's several $1 million. A lot of good ideas in that. Any thoughts on where that money would come from, and kind of I mean, if we kept it, would we float another bond? How would we pull that off?
Yeah. That's in my mind the big issue of keeping it as a city park is, where does the money come from to, and maybe even don't really need to change it a lot. I wouldn't, in fact, I think the way it is terrific, but to keep it the same still sometimes requires an investment. And like this issue with calorie cycle and erosion, if it's our property, we need to spend some money on that. And, you know, right now, nothing is programmed, and no substantial amount of funds are programmed in our capital improvement program for, you know, we don't have millions of dollars set aside for the waterfront.
And one more question too. I know there's always been a balance of a public access and biological habitat kind of restoration. And the plan shows, you know, breaching the that tidal pool at the very end, the term they're using on there.
Good.
Oh, dike breach material. Would that be walkable? Is that, or has it been thought out really thoroughly? That if they breach it, can you still walk around that, or was it?
The idea, it hasn't been fully developed, but the idea would be it would not be walkable, that it would be a place where the birds would.
Oh, I see, making roost. Yeah, right.
Less disruptive for them.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I had a few. One is would you say that the MOU as kind of put any changes that the city might envision on hold because the property might be transitioned to the East Bay Regional Park District, and that when it expires, then the city is basically accepting it as a city park that can then that amenities could potentially go forward?
I wouldn't read that much into it. It was just a framework for discussions, and you know, and either party could have terminated it at any time, anyhow. So I wouldn't read anything into its expiration, other than there just no active discussions have occurred in recent years, and you know, maybe someday we'll start up again, but right now it isn't. And the people who are most involved in preparing that MOU, incidentally, that both on the city side and on the park district side, are no longer there. So it's fine that it's going away, in my view.
Okay, so it is fully owned property out there at the bulb, and that little neck piece that we could be planning amenities for, sounds like. And there's no plans to transition it at this point to East Bay Parks. One question I had, and some other questions, Measure C that says the voters have to approve changes in use. Does that just apply to Golden Gate Fields property, or is that for the neck and bulb as well?
It's for everything on the waterfront.
Okay.
So it's everything west of the freeway.
And I think most of the things I've seen that people, for example, from Love the Bulb and other folks have suggested, do those seem compatible with, storage for this or that? For example, does that seem compatible with current uses, or does that seem like it would trigger a vote from Measure C?
I don't know a lot of the details. I haven't seen the details of what's proposed, but from what I've heard, it seems to be compatible with what we have on the books today. So we would not have to go through a Measure C vote, as I understand.
And then you mentioned the owl habitat a little bit. I was intrigued by one of the things in one of the documents on the agenda that said the owl habitat, there's consideration for like transitioning it to like passive recreation, and there had been thoughts of active recreation, but maybe it would just be passive recreation. And I'm wondering, do you know how often people check for owls? Like, are the owls still out there? Is there a process by which that, what would the process look like? Because the city document talks about transitioning that area to something else, even though we don't own it. So how do you see that happening?
So the sequence is a little different. It was originally, the original state park plan identified that plateau area as a active recreation playfields area, I think was the terminology they used. And so you go back and look at that 2002 plan, it would be in there. When the Tom Bates fields were under discussion and under development, they needed to mitigate some damage that was being done to burrowing owl habitats over there. So they swapped it out basically. And this location became the habitat, the plateau became the habitat for the owls. And as far as the activity and monitoring, we have historically retained a consultant who prepared monitoring reports for a number of years. And when the owls did return, we brought him back in to take a look at it. I haven't heard anything in the last year or so, but I know Audubon Society people are paying a lot of attention to it. And I'm sure if there were issues, we would hear about it from citizen volunteers.
So that could be something we might want an update on. It sounds like the city's doing something with it, even though it's not city land.
Well, no, we're not proposing to do anything with it, to be very clear.
Involved with the studies of the owls?
Yes, we retained a expert in burrowing owls to help us make sure that was a good habitat for them.
Okay, so yeah, we might want to have a double check to make sure that it's still being used, that the owls are actually using that space or not, and have someone let us know what the possibilities are for transitioning it away from owl habitat if no owls are using it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look into that for you. I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that we would ever get regulatory approval to touch that habitat at this point in time.
And sometimes my dog gets under that fence. Do you know who deals with that?
That should be reported to the East Bay Regional Park District. They maintain that fence, and that is a concern for the owls because that is disruptive to their habitat for the dogs. The purpose of the fence is to keep the dogs out.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Amenderies.
Thanks. Sorry, I just remembered I had another question. I saw in the 2018 budget for the capital improvement plan that there was $300,000 set aside for the Albany bulbs. I'm just curious what that was intended for. Has it been spent? Just the status of that.
There's a reserve set aside. It hasn't been earmarked for any particular thing. There have been discussions about doing different, originally started as an allocation to do some further environmental studies. If the property were to be transitioned over to the park district, since that has not gone forward, it could be used for something else, or the city council could decide just to return it back to the regular general fund if they wished. So it's not locked into any particular thing at this point in time. The first place to, if I may, just to kind of add to that answer, the most likely place that we're going to need to spend money in the near future is to address that erosion. And frankly, that will be a lot more money than that. It'll be a lot more than the 300,000.
And if the commission wanted to act on some of the there's a diagram you showed of the different proposed activities out on the bulb, and a bike path and bike ped trail and things like that. Is that something at what stage would the do you see the city council bringing something like that down to the Parks Commission, or the Parks Commission setting its own agenda on improvements on the bulb?
I would think that the city council needs to initiate that. That would be a very major policy decision that they would both the decision to make improvements out there, and then the financial support to implement those things. So that would definitely, in my mind, it would definitely be. Of course, the commission can make any recommendations it wants, but in my mind, that would be the place to start. Would be with the city council deciding that that's where they want to focus their energies.
Okay, any other questions before we turn to public comment? Okay, please raise your hand if you would like to comment on this item. Okay, staff, if you could start letting people in.
Hi, this is Susan Moffett from Love the Bulb, and I want to thank Jeff Bond for an excellent and very helpful presentation. And if it could be posted on the city website, that might be helpful to helping everyone understand things better. I think in terms of the master plan, given the background that Jeff has explained, the key thing is to set the direction for future planning at the bulb. Since things are going to move forward slowly, things need to, the general principles of preserving the traditions at the bulb need to be established. And importantly, small infrastructure improvements that will support the ongoing traditions and culture of stewardship at the bulb. I think that's what's important. Because the place works right now because the people who use the space pick up the trash, pick up the dog poop, take care of it, take care of, plant native plants and so on. And it would be extremely helpful to have a little bit of infrastructure like storage. And also it would be very helpful to have a temporary portable classroom. And I want to emphasize that none of what we're proposing is out at the bulb, because that is complicated. That needs a separate planning process. So what we're suggesting in the near term is things that we think could be done, such as things right in that strip that Jeff mentioned. So by the parking lot on city land where there have already been temporary buildings established in the past, by providing a little bit of infrastructure there that would allow programming and support programming that would, especially as the bulb becomes more popular and a lot more people are using it, to support that culture. We also think that kayak and storage would be good, because It's more equitable. It allows people who don't own or can't transport kayaks and stand-up paddleboards to use the beach, and also would reduce the need for parking. So on our website, we have laid out a vision for the Albany bulb that does include some more long-term ideas, such as create with nature zones and other kinds of nature environmental programming, history and art programming. But the key thing is just to provide a little bit of infrastructure. Number one, by the parking lot, not out at the bulb. We don't need a road. We don't want a road out to the bulb. That's not necessary. And then also just to have the master plan highlight not just what is in the excellent transition study, but also the waterfront element of the general plan, which I encourage commissioners to get familiar with, because there's a lot of good direction in there also that we think what we're suggesting is consistent with. So there's a lot of good policy already established. And so just making sure that that's included and moved forward with in the master plan, and the use, in the Prop 68 applications. Some of these things I think could be done in the near term and are feasible, and something that I think would be good to move forward with. So thanks for your work on this.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any other hands. I had a follow-up question for Jeff. It's come up a few times, but could you clarify a little bit more what is city property? Can you actually share your screen again that shows the patchwork of ownership? Because what I see is just this narrow strip that goes from like the freeway along adjacent to Buchanan all the way out to the bulb, and I'm wondering, how much room do we have to plan with there?
So I'm not sure. I don't have it teed up, but I have other diagrams that go into a little bit more detail. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. And I'm not sure how far this is going to let me zoom in. 300%, just see what happens. That's not zooming. Basically, the roadway, I think the right of way, I believe, was 80 feet. I'm sorry, this isn't working very well, but this orange right of way that runs east-west, I believe, was 80 feet wide. So it goes up into that grassy area that's just north of the roadway, and perhaps
there's a few paths there. There's like a sidewalk and then a gravelly trail. Is that part of what you're talking about?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's actually the Bay Trail right there. The Bay Trail and a small 3 or 4 foot high fence. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find it while we're talking here, but I do have a diagram that goes, we do have a diagram that goes into much more detail exactly where the city's right of way goes there. And of course, whatever we would want to do, we would need to make sure that it was in our right of way, or get an agreement from the park district to use some of their property, which they might be amenable to.
Okay, and if it is 80 feet wide, you could put a 20 by 20 foot thing and still have 60 feet of space, I guess, or something.
Yeah, and as the speaker noted, there was a temporary housing homeless shelter there. What was that, about 8 or 9 years ago? So we squeezed it in there at the time that we were dealing with some of the homeless encampments on the bulk.
Okay. Other comments from commissioners about this item?
Yeah, I guess, my comment on it is
Seeing
really,
none, thank you, John, for together. That's been a common request.
I'm sorry, was there a question directed to me? I couldn't, I lost video there, or lost audio.
Yeah, I think Brian's having issues with his Wi-Fi.
I was confused. I thought we were back to Commissioner.
I think my Wi-Fi is kind of spotty. All right, thank you, Jeff, for that. It has been a common request for many months from commissioners, and I think it's well timed as we consider what to do with this part of the park system with the master plan. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have item 6, discussion and possible action on matters related to the following items. 6, research public restrooms on Oloney Greenway, a subcommittee comprised by Commissioner Beal. Recommendation is for information only. Commissioner Beal, take it away.
Okay, I'm gonna hang on a second. Okay, here is the PDF file that was included with the packet. It didn't show up as a PDF file for some reason. I had to rename it. But the idea that the assignment to the commission was to study the need and feasibility of the Oloney Greenway. So what I tried to do here in the month of August, while everything was closed, was to try to triage the thing and put together, what the steps would be, how we would go about this, what would be the deliverables of the city council. I thought about, maybe one potential step would be to do a formal survey. And I thought, that would probably take a few months to delay the project somewhat. Maybe wouldn't be necessary. The commission could still decide to do that. So I did just talk to a few people out on the Greenway and around town. Everyone seemed to like the idea. The thing that came up was litter, but particularly it was town on the south end of the Greenway. And someone said, well, we should not, if you do put up restroom, don't put it here because, there'd be. So looking at that, then I think, something we would need to do, kind of the chicken and the egg problem, is, when this does get to the city council, they're going to put it before the public. Do we want to build a restroom? They're going to want specific locations and costs involved. So, but how do we get there? Because, obviously we're not going to go out and get bids on contracts because there's no work order. There's been no decision yet. So kind of let's just take a look at what are the basic considerations, is that we're probably going to need water, a sewer line, some stuff like that. And sort of referring back to the previous topic, how, jurisdictions are important. It's not immediately clear what is city-owned property and what's not. And you're trying to get someone else, another property owner, to cooperate with something as well. That's difficult to do. But then there you have it. Obviously, BART and the East Bay Regional Park District possibly own some of this land. And then, so there you have. So back to this list they made. So, people have talked about things like parklets and so forth in the city. It does look like there's a lot of space along the Greenway. So it seems like the next steps would be to kind of discuss with staff what the potential sites are, to sort of establish restroom feasibility zones. If we were going to have restrooms, where would they be? and maybe have a survey or a workshop with residents, something akin to, maybe pin the restroom on the Oloney trail, like pin the tail on the donkey, where would you put it? And we saw some of the things, the workshops we've had in the city that have been successful, where people have different dots. You get so many dots, you could spread them around. And then maybe ask the maintenance department to kind of just give us a thumb in the air estimate of what something like this might cost. And then present a list to the city, the options to the city council, and then they would decide, what to do. And just again, looking at the calendar, trying to figure out, well, how do you get something done within our term? It seems like it would be good to get something to the city council by the end of the year, by say November or December, in order for something to happen next year, to look at allocating money and so forth. So that's kind of what I wrote up on this. So I think I'll throw it back to the chair as to how to proceed if we want to have comments or questions from the other commissioners, or open it up to the public comment.
Thank you. Next we'll have questions from commissioners, followed by public comment. And Commissioner Beal, can you zoom in on that? And okay, who's got a question?
I'll scroll if someone wants to see the lower part. And I think Commissioner Kent had a comment.
No, I'm trying to unmute myself. There we go. Great. Yeah. Brian, pretty interesting start. I thought that it could easily be expanded so that you mentioned going back to the maintenance for cost, but it might be that you have, I'm not sure if you're done with this, you're moving on, but we could expand and I could help you. We could take pictures of different types of restrooms, from the porta potty all the way to like a sports field restroom, and give the cost range. Because I know some projects we've worked on recently, a sports field restaurant that serves like a baseball field might be in the range of $250,000. But as you know, a porta potty with maintenance regime is, what, tens of thousands. So there's everything in between. And so maybe we could go a little further before we give it back to the city, so it has a little bit more to draw on, if you're interested in pursuing it.
Okay, well that seems more of a discussion topic, but let's see what other questions we have.
Okay, yeah, it is. I guess. Sorry.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Abbott.
This might be a discussion topic as well as I think about it. But my question was, did you look at all at the self-cleaning restrooms? One of the things that gave rise to this when I was thinking about it a few years ago was actually a magazine I get now as a member of the Parks and Rec Commission. And it had advertisements for self-cleaning restrooms, and that really piqued my interest because maintenance is definitely the issue. So I just wondered if you'd had an opportunity to look at that sort of information or not, what you thought about it.
Yeah, how I would respond to that is, no, I didn't look into it in detail, but the idea came up, and I think that would be part of this. Would be looking at the different types. That's sort of part of the plan. And what I was sort of doing was, this is what we would do. And my thought on the next step, I wouldn't say this is the end of it for the commission. No, we should either, if PROS Commissioner Kent wants to join in the subcommittee, that would be one good way to go between now and the next meeting. Another way would be simply to have this brought up at a subsequent PROS Commission meeting. The problem is that the master plan is going to take up the next. So I think, having a subcommittee, to study this further and to look at just that, because it did occur to me, I think I had seen the video on the self-cleaning restrooms in San Francisco that were but this was more of a case where they come and pick them up. So I think, I think this would be good. So turn it back to the chair for more comments.
And I'll just see if I can find that information. I'll share it with you if I can dig it out, because it was very helpful.
Okay. Further questions for Commissioner Beal? Okay, Commissioner Menderes.
You mentioned something about land ownership, and I'm just curious, is all of the Oloney Greenway City of Albany property? I mean, what's in Albany, of course.
Can staff address that?
Part of the Oloney Greenway belongs to BART. We share the property with BART. Typically, I would say that the city owns, if you look at the fence line from the homes on the east side of the tracks, and you go, I think it's about 10 feet from there to out towards Masonic. That's a city-owned property. The BART typically owns, I think it's like where the BART tracks run, but it's the top of the BART tracks. You know, it's if you look at the top structure, I think there's a certain footage of, beyond the width of the BART tracks that the BART owns. That's my best answer for today.
That's why essentially we need, for any of these things, we need essentially with like a site survey. We need something to clearly identify its work.
And the city does have that information. So, once you're ready to move further ahead, we can help with that information.
I would also say that in the past, when topics regarding use of this area have come up, there's been pushback from the property owners whose property actually does stretch out a little bit further. And so there's some real pushback there. But also, it seems like it's not an insurmountable barrier if we want to use something that's on BART's property. We have we've made other improvements on BART-owned property. So it seems like it might not be impossible.
It's not impossible. We've done improvements on the Oloney Greenway in coordination with BART. So it's been done before, so we can do it again. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Price.
This might also be a point of discussion, not a question, but the just thinking about identifying locations, and I'm wondering if Commissioner Beal, you looked at kind of other planning documents for the city. I'm kind of thinking about like the, Solano complete streets plans and things like that, about just looking at sort of co-locations and how we're thinking about this along the location, sort of along the whole length of the Greenway, and like how it aligns with other objectives, I guess.
Yeah, my idea was not to get into that sort of detail. That essentially I feel that this is going to be a combination of where the public wants to have a restroom and where it's feasible to have a restroom. And that's where I mentioned kind of like there's a chicken and the egg problem here, because so I think, roughly speaking, the way to proceed would, and I'm not saying we can't put a restroom in somewhere that we don't own, but it's certainly more difficult, and I would want to know. And my approach to getting things done is to kind of identify the path of least resistance. Where is the path of least resistance that we could get a restroom on the Oloney Greenway? All these things mentioned, it's just get it on paper and then have some sort of workshop where the public can come and put the dots on the map and say, this is where. So that's kind of creeper approach. It's kind of circle our wagons around the problem. And we need to get more information, but also, we need to identify what information it is. And so I kind of felt like at this stage, it's not for me to decide where we're going to put it. It's where would people want it? Because I do have definite ideas, but I try not to be, advocate a specific position. I want to be more responsive to what the public wants.
Okay, Commissioner Kent.
Brian, is there a particular problem that I think there is a general problem, but is there a few places that are really problematic that cause you see this need? Is there one place that's being used as a bathroom, basically?
Well, and again, that's where we haven't done a big survey of the public, but for my just kind of take on it, and I've used this trail for decades, actually, both as an Albany resident and as a non-Albany resident, is that, and also looking at what else is going on in town with some of our inclusion issues. And I think we want Albany to be perceived as a welcoming community. So that kind of, from my take on it, would be there's three spots, right? There's the three entrances essentially to the trail, either on the north side, the south side, or in the middle. And each of those have their pros and cons. So the south side, I heard, people were worried about littering in the creek. The north side, you got the same thing. But on the other hand, maybe we could get the city of El Cerrito to help pay it for us. Maybe we could put it on the border with El Cerrito and get someone else to help pay for it. Maybe Solano Avenue would be a good location, because then it would help also serve the business district there, and it would be more likely to have some of the infrastructure we need. So those were the 3 points, but also the looking at it, the place with the Albany, with the tubes, the Portland, like that sort of, that's sort of like our city sign. It would be good to have a restaurant, but those are all places, and it's really going to look at, I guess, the feasibility and again the property ownership, because it looks to me like, parklets have been a popular idea in the city. There's, I actually went and recorded some video of it. There's rows of empty parking spots on Masonic. So obviously neighbors, that would become an issue. How are the neighbors of a particular spot feel about it? So, so a place that's far away from neighbors might be good, but yeah, we'll just need to get the map and let the public weigh in.
Okay, well, let's turn to public comment, and please do raise your hand if you have a comment about this item on the agenda. All right, seeing none, return to commissioners for discussion.
I did say hand, just go up, just FYI, if you want to.
Oh yeah, sure enough.
Just
Thanks for that. Staff, can you let them in?
I think Roberta can speak now if she's here.
Go ahead, Roberta. Looks like you might be unmuted. Looks like something's not quite right with your setup there. If you're not able to voice your thoughts at this moment with the technology, please do consider sending an email to the commission, which also goes to staff and all the commissioners at PROSC at albanyca.org. That's PROSC at albanyca.org. And if you want to try again later, that's great, but we do need to move on. Okay, I had a couple things. One is, I think a consideration would be like where our existing bathrooms Does anyone know of a public restroom besides the community center right now? And of course, that would have certain hours, and and a public bathroom on the Greenway. I guess you could have a timed lock to also have certain hours, or maybe it would be 24 hours for a public bathroom on the Greenway. But the community center certainly is right there. Do people know of any other public restrooms along
parks, Memorial Park? But that's not. It's a little bit off. It's not that. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Maybe we look at.
Doesn't seem like it. And then another.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at just the Oloney Greenway, I think you're right. Just maybe the community center. I don't see any others. But
well, maybe the senior center. I guess that might have. It has a lobby, and I think it has public restrooms in it. Does Sid used to work there, or do you know, Sid, if that has bathrooms accessible to the public?
Yes, during business hours.
Okay. And then a friend of mine was talking to me about this, and he was saying, as one of the range of continuum of possibilities that Commissioner Kent was bringing up was, I think he saw somewhere in the East Bay, maybe even in Berkeley somewhere, of porta potties that were surrounded by like a decent looking structure, but much cheaper than a full, custom built thing. And then with like a sink outdoors. So like a real sink. So that's like, there's all kinds of hybrid solutions and things, or the whole gamut that are possible. Other comments that commissioners had?
Well, I think when Brian mentioned the 3 spots, and I thought that was pretty interesting, either end or the center, and the center being Solano Avenue. And is there a need for a restaurant on Solano Avenue? I know that maybe the Retail Association representative here can speak to that, whether that would be supported. Maybe it would serve the Oloney Greenway users and Solano Avenue users.
I mean, frankly, one of the real reasons, that gave rise to this whole idea is the store owners coming to their store in the morning and finding human waste in their doorway, from generally people experiencing homelessness, but there might just be people experiencing desperation in some cases. You know how that goes. But I'm all for placing the restrooms where the people are, and I don't see a lot of people experiencing homelessness in the residential areas. I see them in the commercial areas. So that would be my recommendation. And there is interest from the merchant organizations to see a public restroom. Ideally, one that's 24 hours. Again, there are people living here on the street, and they have need around the clock. So that's what we were looking at. And that was actually one of the things that was interesting about the self-cleaning restroom that I saw, is that it could be set so there was a time limit, 20 minutes or something, and that's it. Because there are issues with, public spaces like that being used inappropriately at all hours. So there is some interest in that. There's some need for that. But yes, there's definitely interest in facility right at Solano.
And if I could just say one more about the Solano location, and I didn't make it onto my report here, but one of the considerations is getting someone else to help pay for this. And we saw how with the parklet, the Hell's Office parklet, how AC Transit contributed $25,000 to that project. So maybe AC Transit potential partner here. Like maybe they need a place for their passengers and for their bus drivers to use the restroom. So it's sort of a universal need that. But with it, there's the flip side. That is the restroom going to relieve us of people, or is it going to bring them? So that was my comment.
Yeah, or maybe the Solano Avenue Association. I don't know what kind of budget they have or what they've spent it on in the past, besides the stroll and other kind of promotional things. But that if you do, if there is a bathroom right there on Solano that would allow people to feel more comfortable staying out longer, walking around and shopping because they knew they could always have a place to go to the bathroom, you know, that there might be literally some buy-in there. And I would caution against, it was mentioned putting it on the property line with El Cerrito. That's like in this dark alley behind El Cerrito Plaza, between El Cerrito Plaza and the Cougar Field or the middle school. And I think for something like a public restroom, the more eyes that are on it, the better.
And there's restroom at BART station. Not great, but there's one. Actually, no, it's inside. Right, you have to buy a ticket.
Yeah, I think this proximity of the school, this proximity of the school is the problem with that location, but it was just kind of one little thought because there's the creek there, there's the Cerrito Creek with where it goes down with the new apartment. So, yeah, I guess I'm thinking it depends on what type of structure we're going for. You know, is it going to be a porta potty? Is it going to be a full building? The full building guy, I certainly. So anyway, those are just some ideas that, you know, we'll see where the process takes us.
I'll just quickly jump in and say one more advantage to putting it near the commercial district is you're going to get a lot less resistance than you will trying to put it near homes. That's probably the case.
Okay. So for next steps, Commissioner Beal put a series of next steps there. But as far as the commission goes, did we have so far we have a subcommittee of one, Commissioner Beal. Did I hear that Commissioner Kent would like to join this subcommittee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Put me on. Yep.
And do we need to vote on that, staff?
No, you don't have to unless you want it to be, you know, put into the minutes because it would be a motion.
Okay. Well,
but you don't have to.
Well, before you do that, let me just throw it out there. Would any other commissioners be interested? Like, for example, Commissioner Abbott would be a great asset to this subcommittee. But I don't want.
You know, I don't feel like I can commit to anything else at this point. However, I will be happy to help out and provide. If you ever have any questions or want to ask me about something, or I'd be happy to help. I've got too much on my plate right now.
About the Brown Act, you know. So
well, as long as there's not, if it's just the two of you, if there's just the two of you, we can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. We won't. You know, the subcommittee, you put in as much as you can. You know, we're all busy.
Yeah, I'm worried about this vote now. I might not get there needed.
I think it would be good to have the vote so we could put it in minutes and then, you know, yeah. Although the meeting, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's have a vote.
Well, I think we'll hold off on a speech from Commissioner Kent advocating for himself and just go straight to a vote. We have a roll call.
So let me first make a motion that we identify Commissioner Beal and Commissioner Kent as the Public Restroom Subcommittee.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz?
Yes.
Commissioner Beal?
Yes.
Commissioner Kent?
Yes.
Commissioner Price?
Yes.
Chair Martin?
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Commissioner Beal, and we look forward to hearing updates in the future. Let us know, or let staff know when you're ready to bring something up, bring something else to our attention that we can agendize. Next up on the meeting, we have item 7, future agenda items. Committee members announce requests for future agenda items. Who has things they would like to see addressed? I did notice in the minutes, somebody, it was a few months ago now at our last meeting, had requested something about an update for trees at Terrace Park. Does anyone remember what that was about?
There was some discussion about whether we're putting a large tree in there or small trees. Was that the question?
Was that like when the tree got cut down that was near the play structure or something, or I don't know, or something like that?
Yeah, they took a large tree down, and we were concerned they were putting smaller trees in rather than a large, potentially, mature tree in 30 years in the future.
Okay, well,
I think that was, I'm not sure, but I think that might have been.
Okay. So maybe we can have not Commissioner, but
John
Hockridge, when we have trees on our agenda again, Isabel, could you ask him to address that?
Yes, I will. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Other requests from staff for future agendas? I think we're pretty well booked through this fall. We have a lot on our plate, so I'm looking forward to that. Okay, with seeing no other items, let me find the.
I just want to mention something, Brian.
Yeah.
This is kind of back to the announcement portion. Unless I missed it, there is a special meeting on October 29th. Do you want to mention that before the end, Isabel, or did you already mention it and I missed it?
Well, I sent an email to the commissioners to save the date for a special meeting between the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission concerning the upcoming development at the Albany Bowl. So it was a save the date. Thank you to those who have responded that you can make it. More information is forthcoming.
And that's the September 29th.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's close to me geographically, so I will need to recuse myself as a commissioner from that. It's a joint meeting with planning and zoning, but and Commissioner Beal to chair that one.
Yeah, and I was just suggesting that we announce this other meeting and this meeting that the 29th is because we approve or deny street tree removal, and there's one associated with this project. So that was all.
Yeah, and my understanding is it's for the commission as far as future agenda items that agenda for this Parks and Rec Commission will just be narrowly focused on the street tree aspect of that development. Okay, so seeing no other suggested future agenda items, the next item is number 8. Next meeting is October 14th at 7 p.m., where we should be hearing from the consultants on the Parks Master Plan and Prop 68 recommendations. And we look forward to seeing as much of that packet in advance. And then we get to item 9, adjournment. Thank you all. Good night.